What if I told you that one of the most dangerous substances in your kitchen cabinet right now isn't a cleaning product or a medication with a skull on the label? It's probably sitting in your spice rack, looking completely innocent. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Every single year, thousands of people end up in emergency rooms, not because they took illegal drugs or overdosed on pharmaceuticals, but because they thought natural meant safe. They grabbed an herb their grandmother used, took way too much, and their body decided to stage a full-blown revolt. I'm not here to scare you away from medicinal plants. Actually, it's the opposite. I want you to use them, but I want you to use them right. Because the difference between medicine and poison, it's almost always the dose. This one tip might change your life, but that's just the start. Subscribe to take control of your health. Today, we're diving into 20 forgotten medicinal herbs that people misuse constantly. Some of these you've probably heard of. Others might be completely new to you, but all of them share one thing in common. They work. They really, genuinely work. And that's exactly why they're dangerous when you don't respect them. Let me show you what I mean. Let's start with a plant that sounds like something out of a fairy tale. Comfrey, also called knitbone, because for centuries, healers used it to literally knit broken bones back together. Sounds magical, right? And honestly, it kind of is. Comfrey contains a compound called allantoin that accelerates cell regeneration. Herbalists have used it for thousands of years to heal fractures, sprains, and wounds. Your great-great-grandmother probably had a comfrey poultice ready for any injury. So, what's the problem? The problem is that comfrey also contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids. Say that 5 times fast. These compounds don't just help cells grow, they damage liver cells in a way that's cumulative and often irreversible. And here's the twist, you won't feel it happening. Your liver doesn't have pain receptors. By the time you notice symptoms, the damage might already be severe. People misuse comfrey in 2 major ways. First, they take it internally. They brew comfrey tea, thinking it'll heal their ulcers or soothe their gut. Bad idea. The German government actually banned internal use of comfrey back in 1992 after multiple cases of liver failure. Second, they use it externally on broken skin. Those pyrrolizidine alkaloids can absorb through wounds and still reach your liver. Safe dosage guidance. External use only on intact skin for no more than 10 days at a time and no more than 4 to 6 weeks per year total. If you have any liver issues, skip it entirely. The topical creams with controlled alkaloid levels, those can work beautifully for bruises and sprains. The homemade preparations where you don't know the alkaloid content, that's gambling with your liver. But here's what really gets me. People hear banned in Germany and think, oh, those Europeans are just being overly cautious. No. Germany has some of the most herb-friendly regulations on the planet. When Germany bans something, you should probably listen. Speaking of listening, let's talk about pennyroyal. It smells like mint. It looks like mint. It's actually in the mint family, but pennyroyal is not something you want to confuse with your afternoon tea ingredient. Throughout history, pennyroyal was used as an abortifacient, a substance that induces abortion. Women in desperate situations would turn to pennyroyal when they had no other options. And sometimes it worked, but often it killed them too. The toxic compound here is pulegone. In small amounts, like what you'd get from a single cup of weak tea, it's probably not going to hurt you. But the problem is that people don't use small amounts. They read somewhere that pennyroyal can end a pregnancy, and they take massive doses of the essential oil. In 1994, a young woman died after drinking less than a tablespoon of pennyroyal essential oil. Her liver failed completely within days. Other cases involve seizures, multi-organ failure, and irreversible brain damage. Safe dosage guidance. Honestly, there isn't one for therapeutic use. Some herbalists still use very diluted preparations for menstrual support, but the margin between might help your period and might destroy your liver is razor thin. The essential oil should never be ingested, period. If you see pennyroyal in a commercial product like a tea blend, it's typically such a tiny amount that it's present for flavor only. Don't try to extract more benefit by using more. And please, I'm begging you, if you're facing an unwanted pregnancy, pennyroyal is not the answer. There are so many safer options available now. This isn't the 19th century. While we're in this territory, let's talk about blue cohosh. Midwives have used this plant for centuries to induce labor. It contains compounds that stimulate uterine contractions, and when used correctly by trained practitioners, it can help a stalled labor progress. But here's where things go wrong. The internet is full of people recommending blue cohosh to pregnant women who are overdue and want to avoid medical induction. These women start taking blue cohosh capsules at home, often starting weeks before their due date, often in massive doses because they're impatient. Blue cohosh contains colosaponin and methylcytosine. The first one can cause intense uterine contractions, sometimes so intense that they deprive the baby of oxygen. The second one is chemically similar to nicotine and can affect the baby's heart rate. There are documented cases of babies born with heart failure, strokes, and seizures after their mothers used blue cohosh to self-induce. Safe dosage guidance. This is really not a DIY herb. Traditional use involved very specific preparations, specific timing, and careful observation by experienced midwives. If you're pregnant and considering blue cohosh, please work with a qualified midwife or herbalist who can assess whether it's appropriate for your situation. The general recommendation is to avoid it entirely during pregnancy unless professionally supervised, and even then, only near term. Never use it in the first or second trimester. And those labor prep protocols floating around online? Ignore them. The irony is that women turn to blue cohosh because they want a natural birth experience. But there's nothing natural about putting your baby at risk because you read something on a forum. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Pokeweed. This one's going to surprise some of you, especially if you're from the American South. Pokeweed grows wild across much of the United States. It's got those distinctive purple berries that birds love. And in parts of Appalachia, people have eaten poke salad for generations. It's a traditional spring dish made from young pokeweed leaves. So it must be safe, right? Not exactly. Every part of the pokeweed plant is toxic. The roots are the most dangerous, followed by the berries, then the stems, then the leaves. Even the leaves contain compounds called phytolactotoxin and phytolacyginin that can cause severe gastrointestinal distress, lowered blood pressure, respiratory depression, and in severe cases, paralysis and death. But wait, you might be thinking, my grandmother ate poke salad her whole life and she was fine. Here's the secret. Traditional preparation involves boiling the young leaves multiple times, discarding the water each time. This leaches out most of the toxins. Most. The people who get poisoned are the ones who don't know about the boiling process, who harvest leaves that are too mature, who accidentally include berries or stems, or who think that because their grandmother ate it, they can just throw it in a smoothie. There's also been a disturbing trend of people using pokeweed medicinally for everything from cancer to arthritis, based on some very preliminary research. They're taking tinctures and capsules made from roots, the most toxic part, in doses that would make any traditional herbalist faint. Safe dosage guidance. If you want to try poke salad, learn from someone who's been making it for decades. Young leaves only, harvested before the stems turn red. Boil at least twice, preferably 3 times with fresh water each time. Discard all the water. Never, ever eat the roots, berries, or mature plant. For medicinal use, this is one where I'd say the risk-benefit ratio just doesn't make sense for home use. The therapeutic window is too narrow, and we have safer alternatives for almost every condition pokeweed was traditionally used for. Like this video and comment herbs if you love medicinal plants. I read every single comment, and I want to know which of these you've actually encountered in real life. Now let's pour ourselves a metaphorical drink and talk about wormwood. You know, the herb that supposedly made Van Gogh cut off his ear. Wormwood is the key ingredient in absinthe, that emerald green spirit that was banned in most countries for nearly a century. Artists and writers in the late 1800s were absolutely obsessed with it. They claimed it sparked creativity and visions. They also went mad, experienced seizures, and died young at alarming rates. The active compound everyone worried about was thujone. For decades, scientists believed thujone caused hallucinations and brain damage. Turns out that was a bit exaggerated. Modern research suggests most of the problems with absinthe came from its extremely high alcohol content and poor regulation, not thujone specifically. But here's the thing. Just because the absinthe panic was overblown doesn't mean wormwood is safe to mess around with. Thujone in high doses is still neurotoxic. It can cause seizures, muscle breakdown, and kidney failure. People who take wormwood supplements for digestive issues or parasite cleanses sometimes don't realize that more doesn't mean better. And wormwood tinctures and essential oils concentrate the thujone to potentially dangerous levels. Safe dosage guidance, short-term use of low-dose wormwood preparations, like bitter digestive tonics, is probably fine for most people. We're talking small amounts taken before meals to stimulate digestion. The traditional dose was often just a few drops of tincture or a small cup of weak tea. What's not fine? Taking wormwood supplements daily for weeks on end, using the essential oil internally, or doing DIY parasite cleanses where you're taking heroic doses. If you have any history of seizures, avoid wormwood completely. And if you're pregnant, definitely skip it. Thujone can cross the placenta. The Renaissance artists who drank absinthe weren't doing themselves any favors, but at least they were diluting their wormwood in alcohol and taking relatively small amounts at a time. The modern wellness influencer telling you to take wormwood capsules 3 times a day for a month? They're giving worse advice than 19th century bartenders. Okay, we're about to enter territory that might genuinely surprise you. Because this next herb isn't some rare plant you've never heard of. It's licorice, the same flavor in your childhood candy. Licorice root has been used medicinally for over 4,000 years. The Egyptians loved it. The Chinese consider it one of the most important herbs in their pharmacopoeia. It soothes sore throats, calms stomach ulcers, and has legitimate anti-inflammatory and antiviral properties. Sounds pretty harmless, right? It's in candy. Here's what the candy companies don't tell you. Real licorice contains a compound called glycyrrhizin that in large amounts causes your body to retain sodium and lose potassium. This might not sound like a big deal until you realize that potassium depletion can cause your heart to stop. The FDA actually issued warnings about this. In 2017, they reported cases of people over 40 who ate large amounts of black licorice and experienced heart arrhythmias, some of them fatal. We're not talking about eating one piece of candy. We're talking about people who ate 2 ounces or more daily for several weeks. But here's where it gets really concerning for the herbal medicine community. Licorice root supplements and teas contain way more glycyrrhizin than candy. Someone who's taking licorice root daily for digestive issues or adrenal support could easily exceed safe levels without realizing it. Safe dosage guidance. For occasional use, like a cup of licorice tea when you have a sore throat, you're probably fine. The problems start with regular high-dose use. Most experts recommend no more than about 100 milligrams of glycyrrhizin per day, which translates to roughly 1 to 5 grams of actual licorice root depending on potency. If you're taking licorice supplements, look for DGL, deglycyrrhizinated licorice, which has had the glycyrrhizin removed. You lose some of the benefits, but you avoid the heart risks. Never take regular licorice root if you have high blood pressure, heart disease, or kidney disease. Don't combine it with diuretics or other medications that affect potassium. And please, if you're one of those people who actually likes the taste of black licorice, maybe don't eat an entire bag in one sitting. From candy to cocktails, let's talk about kava. If you've ever been to a kava bar, you know the drill. They serve you this muddy-looking drink that tastes like dirty dishwater mixed with pepper. Your mouth goes numb, and then you feel this wave of calm wash over you. It's kind of magical. Kava has been used ceremonially in Pacific Island cultures for thousands of years. It genuinely reduces anxiety without the drowsiness and addiction potential of pharmaceutical sedatives. Some studies suggest it works as well as low-dose benzodiazepines for generalized anxiety disorder. So, what's the catch? The catch is that starting in the late 1990s and early 2000s, reports started coming out of Europe about kava causing severe liver damage. Germany banned it, the UK banned it. People were getting liver transplants. Some people died. Now, here's where it gets complicated, because the Pacific Islanders have been drinking kava for millennia without these problems. Researchers think several factors contributed to the European liver damage cases. First, some manufacturers started using parts of the plant that weren't traditionally consumed, the stems and leaves instead of just the roots. Second, they started using chemical solvents to extract the active compounds instead of water. Third, some people were combining kava with alcohol or medications that also stress the liver. Safe dosage guidance. If you want to use kava, source matters enormously. Look for products made from noble kava varieties, root only, traditionally prepared or at least water extracted. Avoid products that don't specify the kava variety or extraction method. Don't use kava daily for extended periods. Think of it as something for occasional use, not daily supplementation. Never combine it with alcohol. And if you have any liver issues or take medications metabolized by the liver, skip kava entirely. The traditional Pacific Island approach actually has built-in safety features that modern supplement manufacturers ignored. Islanders use specific cultivars selected over generations for safety. They prepare it fresh, and they drink it in social settings where the dose is naturally limited. When you concentrate it into a pill and tell people to take it every day, you're stripping away all those cultural safeguards. Speaking of stripping away safeguards, let me tell you about ephedra, also known as ma huang. This one's going to make some of you nostalgic, if you're old enough to remember the 1990s. Ephedra was in everything back then: weight loss supplements, energy drinks, bodybuilding products. It promised to melt fat, boost energy, and give you the body of your dreams. And honestly, it worked. Ephedra is a powerful stimulant that increases metabolic rate and suppresses appetite. The problem is that it also increases heart rate and blood pressure. And when people started stacking it with caffeine, which supplement companies encouraged because the combination worked better for weight loss, they started having heart attacks and strokes. Young, healthy people, athletes. A Major League Baseball player dropped dead during spring training. By 2004, the FDA had received over 18,000 reports of adverse effects related to ephedra, including over 100 deaths. They banned it from dietary supplements entirely. But here's the thing: the ban only applies to dietary supplements. Ephedra is still legally sold for traditional use in some places, and people still seek it out, either not knowing about the dangers or thinking they're special and the risks don't apply to them. Safe dosage guidance. Traditional Chinese medicine used ephedra very differently than weight loss supplements did. They used small doses for short periods to treat respiratory conditions like asthma and bronchitis. The dose range that's been traditionally considered therapeutic is about 5 to 6 milligrams of total ephedrine alkaloids, taken no more than 2 or 3 times a day for no more than 7 days. Compare that to the weight loss supplements that were giving people 25 milligrams or more daily for months on end. Honestly, though, unless you're working with a trained traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, I'd say avoid ephedra entirely. We have safer options for both weight loss and respiratory issues. The therapeutic window is just too narrow, and the consequences of getting it wrong are too severe. But wait, it gets worse. The supplements that replaced ephedra after the ban, many of them contain bitter orange or synephrine, which works similarly and carries similar risks. Same game, different name. Now let's talk about something that won't give you a heart attack, but might accidentally kill you in a completely different way. St. John's wort is probably the most popular herbal antidepressant in the world. And unlike a lot of herbal claims, this one has solid research behind it. Multiple clinical trials have found it's as effective as prescription antidepressants for mild to moderate depression with fewer side effects. So, where's the problem? The problem is drug interactions. St. John's wort is one of the most powerful inducers of certain liver enzymes, particularly one called CYP3A4. When you take St. John's wort regularly, you're basically turbocharging your liver's ability to break down medications. This means medications get cleared from your body faster, which means they stop working as well. This isn't a minor issue. St. John's wort can reduce the effectiveness of birth control pills, leading to unintended pregnancies. It can reduce the effectiveness of HIV medications, allowing the virus to resurge. It can reduce the effectiveness of blood thinners, immunosuppressants used after organ transplants, and chemotherapy drugs. People have literally died because they took St. John's wort without knowing it would interfere with their life-saving medications. Safe dosage guidance. The typical dose for depression is 300 milligrams 3 times daily, standardized to 0.3% hypericin. But before you take even a single capsule, you need to check whether it interacts with any medication you're currently taking. This includes over-the-counter medications. This includes birth control. This includes medications you only take occasionally. The interaction list for St. John's wort is genuinely terrifying. Antidepressants, antipsychotics, anti-anxiety medications, blood thinners, heart medications, HIV drugs, immunosuppressants, cancer treatments, anesthesia, birth control. If you're taking anything prescription, assume St. John's wort might interact until proven otherwise. And here's the really sneaky part. The interactions persist for weeks after you stop taking it, because you've already revved up those liver enzymes. If you're planning surgery, you need to stop St. John's wort at least 5 days before, some say 2 weeks, to make sure your anesthesia works properly. From depression to sleep. Valerian root is the classic herbal sleep aid, used since the time of ancient Greece. It smells like dirty socks. Actually, it smells worse than dirty socks, but people swear by it for insomnia. The evidence on valerian is mixed. Some studies show it helps, others don't. Part of the problem is that valerian's effects seem to build up over time, so single-dose studies don't capture the full picture. Part of the problem is that valerian products vary wildly in quality and potency. But the biggest problem with valerian, from a safety perspective, is that nobody really agrees on what the dose should be. I've seen valerian supplements with doses ranging from 200 milligrams to over 1,500 milligrams. I've seen recommendations saying to take it 30 minutes before bed, 2 hours before bed, or 3 times throughout the day. The clinical trials use different preparations, different doses, and different schedules. So, what happens when someone buys a valerian supplement, follows the package directions, and doesn't get results? They take more, and then more. And while valerian is generally considered safe, very high doses can cause headaches, stomach upset, excitability, the opposite of what you want, and morning grogginess that affects your ability to drive or operate machinery. Safe dosage guidance. Most research suggests 300 to 600 milligrams of a standardized extract taken 30 minutes to 2 hours before bed. The effects may take 2 to 4 weeks of consistent use to become apparent. Don't exceed 900 milligrams unless under professional guidance. And please don't combine it with alcohol, benzodiazepines, or other sedatives. The effects can compound in unpredictable ways. Here's my practical advice. If you're trying valerian for sleep, start at the lower end of the dosing range, give it at least 2 weeks, and keep a sleep diary so you can actually tell if it's helping. The people who get into trouble are the ones who take a massive dose on night 1, expecting it to knock them out like Ambien, and then panic when it doesn't work. Let me tell you about one of the most controversial plants in modern herbalism. Kratom. If you haven't heard of it, You're about to learn a lot. If you have heard of it, you might have strong feelings already. Kratom is a tree from Southeast Asia whose leaves contain compounds that act on opioid receptors. At low doses, it's stimulating. Workers in Thailand have chewed kratom leaves for centuries to get through long days of manual labor. At higher doses, it's sedating and euphoric, more like a traditional opioid. Here's why kratom exploded in popularity in the West. People started using it to get off pharmaceutical opioids, and for many of them, it worked. They swapped their Vicodin or their OxyContin for kratom, experienced manageable withdrawal symptoms, and found themselves no longer dependent on their prescriptions. Sounds like a miracle, right? The problem is that kratom itself is addictive. Those opioid receptor effects cut both ways. People who take kratom regularly develop tolerance, meaning they need more to get the same effect. They develop physical dependence, meaning they get withdrawal symptoms when they stop. The withdrawal isn't as severe as heroin withdrawal, but it's real: anxiety, irritability, muscle aches, insomnia. And the dosing Wild West around kratom is genuinely concerning. You can buy kratom capsules online with no idea how potent they are. Products aren't standardized. Some are contaminated with heavy metals or other substances. People are taking hugely variable doses and wondering why their experiences are so inconsistent. Safe dosage guidance. Okay, I need to be careful here because I don't want to encourage use, but I also don't want people who are going to use it anyway to hurt themselves. Traditional use in Southeast Asia involved chewing fresh leaves or brewing them into tea. Doses were naturally limited. Modern concentrated extracts and powder allow for much higher doses. If you're considering kratom for any reason, start extremely low, like 1 to 2 grams of plain leaf powder. Wait at least an hour to assess effects before taking more. Never combine it with other substances that depress the central nervous system. Don't use it daily. The addiction potential is real. And please, please don't use it to manage opioid withdrawal without professional support. Yes, it might help with symptoms, but you're potentially trading one dependence for another. The FDA has not approved kratom for any medical use and has warned that it can cause serious health effects, including death. At the same time, the herbal community points out that many of the kratom deaths involved other drugs and that properly used kratom has a reasonable safety profile. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. It's a powerful plant that helps some people and harms others, and we desperately need more research. Now we're going to talk about something that might seem like it belongs in a murder mystery, not an herbal medicine video. Aconite, also known as monkshood, wolfsbane, or the queen of poisons. Yes, you read that right. This is an herb that's been used as a murder weapon throughout history, including reportedly by Nazis to poison bullets. And yet it's also been used medicinally in traditional Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine for centuries. How can something be both a beloved medicine and a notorious poison? That's the whole point of this video, isn't it? The dose makes the poison. Aconite contains aconitine, one of the most toxic plant compounds known to science. A few milligrams can kill an adult. It causes death by triggering fatal heart arrhythmias and respiratory paralysis. There is no antidote. And yet, properly processed aconite, called Fu-zi in Chinese medicine, is one of the most frequently prescribed herbs in traditional formulas. It's used for conditions involving cold and yang deficiency. Think fatigue, weakness, and poor circulation. The processing involves lengthy boiling or other traditional methods that destroy most of the aconitine. Safe dosage guidance. I'm going to be more blunt than I've been with any herb so far. Do not use aconite yourself. Do not buy it online. Do not take it based on anything you read on the internet, including this video. Processed aconite in the hands of a qualified traditional medicine practitioner who has studied for years and knows exactly how to prepare and combine it? That's a different story. But the margin for error is essentially zero. Cases of aconite poisoning still occur every year, often when people prepare it themselves or when practitioners make preparation errors. If you're interested in traditional Chinese medicine approaches to conditions that might normally be treated with aconite, work with a licensed practitioner, and trust their judgment about whether it's appropriate for you. And if you see aconite supplements for sale online, run the other way. From fast-acting poison to slow-acting devastation. Aristolochia, also called birthwort or Dutchman's pipe, used to be widely used in traditional medicine for everything from wound healing to weight loss. I say used to be because Aristolochia is now banned in many countries after scientists discovered something horrifying. It causes cancer. Specifically, Aristolochia contains aristolochic acids that are both nephrotoxic, they destroy your kidneys, and carcinogenic. And unlike most carcinogens where the risk increases with dose, aristolochic acids seem to cause cancer even at relatively low exposures. The signature mutation pattern they leave in DNA is so distinctive that researchers can now identify cancers caused by Aristolochia decades after exposure. The most dramatic example came from Belgium in the early 1990s, when over 100 women developed severe kidney failure after taking a weight loss supplement that contained Aristolochia. At least half of them went on to develop urinary tract cancer. Many needed kidney transplants. Safe dosage guidance. There is no safe dose, period. The FDA has warned consumers not to use any products containing aristolochic acids. The herb is banned in Europe, Australia, and many Asian countries. If you see Aristolochia, birthwort, fangji, mutong, or related terms on an ingredient list, do not take it. But here's the scary part. Contamination and mislabeling are ongoing problems. Aristolochia species look similar to other, safer plants, and cases of substitution, sometimes accidental, sometimes deliberate, continue to occur. This is why buying herbal products from reputable, quality-controlled sources matters. A few dollars saved on cheap supplements could cost you your kidneys. Remember when I mentioned that some dangers are lurking in completely ordinary places? Sassafras is the original flavoring in root beer. It's also been used traditionally for blood-purifying tonics and spring health cleanses. The FDA banned saffrole, the main aromatic compound in sassafras, as a food additive back in 1960 after research showed it caused liver cancer in rodents. Modern root beer uses artificial flavors instead. But here's the twist. The carcinogenicity of sassafras in humans is still debated. The rodent studies used very high doses. Some researchers argue that the amount you'd get from occasional use of sassafras tea is unlikely to cause problems. Others point out that even small amounts of carcinogens accumulate over time. The real issue, from my perspective, isn't the occasional cup of sassafras tea. It's the people who heard that sassafras purifies the blood and are drinking it daily, sometimes for weeks at a time, during their spring detox ritual. Safe dosage guidance. If you want to enjoy sassafras tea occasionally, like once or twice a month, you're probably not taking significant risk. But daily use, especially long-term daily use, is not recommended. Some traditional preparations involve lengthy boiling that reduces saffrole content, and the young leaves used to make filet powder, a Cajun seasoning, are naturally low in saffrole. The root bark, which is where most of the saffrole lives, is the problematic part. Given that we have so many other pleasant-tasting herbal teas that don't have question marks around their long-term safety, I'm not sure why you'd make sassafras a daily habit. But if you're determined, at least limit your exposure. We've talked about several herbs that damage the liver now. I wish I could tell you chaparral is different, but it's not. It's actually one of the worst offenders. Chaparral, also known as creosote bush or greasewood, grows in the deserts of the American Southwest. Native American communities used it topically for wounds and as a short-term medicine for various ailments. The Spanish called it hediondilla, little stinker, because of its distinctive smell after rain. In the 1990s, chaparral became popular in the alternative health community as an antioxidant and cancer preventive. Supplement companies started selling capsules and extracts, and then people started developing hepatitis. Between 1992 and 2000, The FDA received 13 reports of liver toxicity associated with chaparral, including 2 people who needed liver transplants. The herb was voluntarily removed from the market by some manufacturers, but never formally banned. Safe dosage guidance. Traditional external use as a wound wash is probably fine. Short-term internal use at low doses might be okay, though I wouldn't recommend it. What's definitely not okay: taking chaparral supplements daily for weeks or months, especially at the high doses supplement manufacturers were recommending. The problem with chaparral is that the liver damage seems idiosyncratic, meaning it doesn't happen to everyone, but when it happens, it can be severe. There's no way to predict who will react badly, and unlike some toxins that give you warning signs, chaparral-induced hepatitis can progress from feeling fine to needing a transplant fairly quickly. If you're committed to the antioxidant benefits that chaparral supposedly provides, there are dozens of safer herbs with similar effects. This is one where the risk-reward calculation just doesn't make sense. Okay, let's shift gears dramatically, because I bet some of you have aloe vera in your home right now. You probably think of it as the safest, most benign plant imaginable. You put it on sunburns, maybe you've drunk aloe juice for digestion. I'm not going to tell you aloe is dangerous, but I am going to tell you that there are 2 very different parts of the aloe plant, and people constantly confuse them. The clear gel from inside the leaf, that's the stuff you put on burns. It's soothing, moisturizing, and pretty safe. Studies show it helps with wound healing and skin conditions. That's the good aloe. The yellow latex from just under the leaf surface, that's a powerful laxative. It contains compounds called anthraquinones that stimulate intestinal contractions. This is what's in aloe supplements marketed for cleansing or regularity. And this is where things go wrong. Anthraquinone laxatives were once common in over-the-counter constipation products, but the FDA actually removed them from the market in 2002 due to safety concerns. Specifically, they can cause severe cramping, electrolyte imbalances, and something called melanosis coli, a darkening of the colon lining that's associated with chronic laxative use. And here's the really alarming thing. A 2-year study by the National Toxicology Program found some evidence that whole leaf aloe vera extract caused intestinal tumors in rats. Not the gel, the whole leaf preparations that include the latex. Safe dosage guidance: aloe gel for external use? Go for it. Drink aloe water or juice. Make sure it's made from inner leaf gel only, with the anthraquinones removed. Taking aloe supplements for constipation? Please don't, at least not regularly. Occasional use at the recommended dose might be okay, but chronic use is where problems develop. The irony is that people often take aloe laxatives as part of a gentle cleanse, not realizing that they're using one of the harsher stimulant laxatives available. If you need help with constipation, fiber, water, and magnesium are much gentler places to start. From one familiar remedy to another: eucalyptus, the smell of cold season, the key ingredient in Vicks VapoRub, the soothing oil you put in your diffuser when you're congested. Eucalyptus oil is genuinely helpful for respiratory conditions. It's an effective decongestant and has antimicrobial properties. Adults use it without problems all the time. The key word there is adults. Eucalyptus oil contains a compound called 1,8-cineol, also called eucalyptol, that can cause a potentially fatal reaction in young children called central nervous system depression. Apply eucalyptus oil near a baby's nose and face, and it can trigger respiratory distress, slowed breathing, and in severe cases, complete respiratory failure. This isn't theoretical. There are documented cases of children being harmed or killed by eucalyptus oil, including cases where well-meaning parents applied it to help with congestion. The same goes for other oils high in 1,8-cineol, like camphor, peppermint, and rosemary. Safe dosage guidance. For adults, eucalyptus oil in a diffuser, steam inhalation, or properly diluted topical application is generally safe. A typical dilution for topical use is around 1 to 2% essential oil in a carrier oil. For children under 2 years old, avoid eucalyptus oil entirely, on the skin, in diffusers, anywhere. For children ages 2 to 10, some experts say very low dilutions, under 0.5%, away from the face are okay, while others recommend avoidance until age 10. When in doubt, skip it. And please, don't ever apply undiluted eucalyptus oil directly to anyone's skin, regardless of age. Those use neat recommendations you see from some essential oil companies, they're wrong and potentially dangerous. Now I'm going to talk about something that might actually make some of you angry, because turmeric is the darling of the health world right now. It's in lattes, supplements, and wellness influencers' routines everywhere, and it genuinely has anti-inflammatory properties backed by research. I'm not here to tell you turmeric is bad, but I am here to tell you that people are taking it in ways and amounts that traditional cultures never imagined, and we're starting to see problems. First, the good news: turmeric in food is almost certainly fine. Traditional cuisines have used it for thousands of years without notable adverse effects. The amounts in curry powder or golden milk recipes are reasonable. But then people discovered that curcumin, the active compound in turmeric, has poor absorption. So supplement companies started adding black pepper extract to increase absorption by up to 2,000%. They created concentrated curcumin extracts. They formulated it with fats to improve bioavailability. Suddenly, people are getting wildly higher blood levels of curcumin than anyone in history ever got from eating curry. And that's when the reports started. Cases of liver injury, some severe enough to require hospitalization. An FDA-sponsored analysis identified multiple cases of acute liver injury associated with turmeric supplements, particularly those with enhanced bioavailability. Beyond liver effects, high-dose curcumin can thin the blood, potentially causing problems for people on blood thinners or before surgery. It can lower blood sugar, problematic for diabetics on medication. It might decrease iron absorption. It interacts with numerous medications. Safe dosage guidance: cooking with turmeric? Enjoy it. That's what it's been used for throughout human history. Taking a basic turmeric supplement at standard doses without enhanced absorption? Probably fine for most people, though I'd still take breaks and not use it continuously forever. Taking high-dose curcumin supplements with enhanced bioavailability daily for months? That's where I get nervous. If you're determined to do this, at least get your liver enzymes checked occasionally. And please tell your doctor you're taking it, especially if you're on other medications or planning surgery. The amount that people are taking now is essentially a pharmaceutical dose of a plant compound. It might be helpful for certain conditions, but let's stop pretending it's the same as eating a bowl of curry. Speaking of blood-thinning effects, let's talk about ginkgo biloba, the supplement your grandfather takes for memory, the extract of one of the oldest tree species on Earth. Ginkgo has been used in traditional Chinese medicine for centuries, and modern research shows it does improve blood flow to the brain. Whether that actually helps cognitive function in healthy people is debated, but there's reasonable evidence for mild benefits in people with cognitive decline. The problem is that ginkgo's blood-thinning effects are stronger than most people realize. Taking ginkgo increases bleeding time, meaning cuts bleed longer and internal bleeding is more likely. For healthy young people, this is rarely an issue. But for elderly people, the main consumers of ginkgo supplements, who often have other bleeding risks, it's a real concern. There are documented cases of hemorrhagic stroke associated with ginkgo use, cases of excessive bleeding during surgery, cases of bleeding into the eye affecting vision. And because ginkgo is so commonly taken by older adults, many of whom are also taking prescription blood thinners, the combination effects can be severe. Safe dosage guidance. Typical doses in studies range from 120 to 240 milligrams daily of standardized extract. If you're going to take ginkgo, stick to these established doses. Do not take it if you're on blood thinners like warfarin, aspirin, or NSAIDs unless your doctor has specifically okayed the combination. Stop taking it at least 2 weeks before any scheduled surgery, and monitor for signs of unusual bleeding, prolonged bleeding from cuts, easy bruising, blood in urine or stool. The frustrating thing about ginkgo is that the cognitive benefits, if real, are modest. We're talking maybe a slight edge in memory and processing speed. Is that worth the bleeding risk? That's a personal calculation, but I think a lot of people are taking ginkgo without truly understanding the trade-offs. Let's end with a herb that perfectly encapsulates everything we've talked about today: senna. It's in pretty much every herbal laxative tea on the market. It works reliably and predictably. It's been used for over 1,000 years, and it's causing an epidemic of colon dysfunction that doctors are only beginning to fully appreciate. Senna works by irritating the intestinal wall, stimulating muscle contractions that push contents along. Take it occasionally for genuine constipation, and it does its job. Take it regularly, though, and several things happen. First, your colon becomes tolerant and requires ever-increasing doses to work. Second, the nerve cells in your colon that coordinate contractions start to die, a condition called colonic inertia. Third, you become dependent on the senna to have any bowel movement at all. This isn't theoretical. Gastroenterologists regularly see patients whose colons have essentially stopped working after years of stimulant laxative abuse. Some need surgical intervention. The very thing they took to avoid constipation created the worst constipation of their lives. What really gets me is that senna is marketed in these gentle-sounding teas: Smooth Move, Dieter's tea, ballerina tea. People drink them nightly thinking they're doing something healthy. They're not. Safe dosage guidance. Senna should be used only occasionally, a few days at most, to address acute constipation. Standard dose is typically 15 to 30 milligrams of sennicides before bed. After 2 weeks of use, you should absolutely stop and address the underlying cause of constipation. If you need regular help with bowel movements, address diet first: fiber, water, movement. Then look at osmotic laxatives like magnesium or polyethylene glycol that don't damage the colon. Stimulant laxatives like senna should be the last resort, not the first choice. And those detox teas that promise weight loss? The weight loss is water and stool weight from diarrhea. You're not detoxing anything. You're depleting electrolytes and damaging your colon. So there you have it, 20 medicinal herbs that people misuse and why dosage matters. I want to be really clear about something before we wrap up. I am not anti-herb. I love herbal medicine. I think plants have incredible healing potential, and I think modern medicine has been arrogant in dismissing traditional knowledge. But here's what I've learned after years of studying this stuff. The dose makes the poison. Always has, always will. The ancient herbalists knew this. The traditional medicine systems knew this. Somewhere along the way, in our rush to embrace natural medicine, we forgot it. The problem isn't the herbs themselves. The problem is that we took concentrated extracts and called them supplements. We removed them from their cultural context and traditional safeguards. We decided that if a little was good, a lot must be better. And then we're surprised when things go wrong. Every single herb we talked about today has legitimate uses. Comfrey really does heal wounds. Valerian really does help some people sleep. Turmeric really is anti-inflammatory. The question is never, does it work? The question is always, what's the right amount for the right person in the right context? Here's my challenge to you. Before you take any herbal supplement, ask yourself these questions. What's the traditional dose? What's the safe duration of use? What medications or conditions might interact with it? And honestly, do I actually need this? Or am I taking it because someone on the internet said I should? If you've made it this far in the video, you're clearly someone who cares about doing things right. You're not looking for quick fixes or magic bullets. You want to understand how these plants actually work so you can use them wisely. That puts you ahead of most people already. If you found this valuable, hit subscribe. I make videos like this regularly. diving deep into topics that most health influencers get wrong. Drop a comment telling me which of these herbs surprised you most, or share an experience you've had with herbal medicine, good or bad. And one last thought to leave you with: the most powerful medicine is knowledge. 1,000 years ago, healers who understood dosage were the difference between life and death. Today, that knowledge is available to anyone willing to learn. Don't just trust labels. Don't just trust traditions. Don't just trust influencers. Learn for yourself. Because when you understand why something works and how much is safe, you transform from a passive consumer into an active participant in your own health. That's real power. I'll see you in the next one.